silence will take a transfer.
I just came to know about Rituda in the morning, and I'm deeply, deeply shocked and grieved. I couldn't believe it that at such a young age, this very creative and sensitive mind, we've lost him. It's strange because just yesterday, Sujoy Ghosh and me were meeting and we were talking about Rituda. You know that Sujoy is playing as an actor in Rituda's latest film. And we were talking about Rituda. And a few weeks back, Rituda and me had spoken on the phone. We were talking about a story that we wanted to do together. And I just have no words to express my grief at this great. It's one of the most brightest cinema minds in the country. A great artist.
फेस्टिवल में सर कैसा रहा उसके बारे में बताइए सर कैसा रहा एक्सपीरियंस और फेस्टिवल वो सर अलग से बात करेंगे चलो 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 थोड़ा थैंक यू थोड़ा none of them are here right now.
We are linking two legends, the classic American novel, The Great Gatsby, and the Indian classic actor, Mr. Amitabh Bachchan. And we're linking them in a special way with The Great Gatsby Goes to Gujarat. You might...
I can't believe I'm sitting here in front of the man, the legend, the angry young man, the one-man industry, the big B, Mr. Amitabh Bachchan himself. The first time I had the good fortune of seeing Mr. Bachchan was when I was in the 4th grade. His daughter Shweta and I were in the same school.
It's wonderful to be here and to be able to talk about Great Gatsby. Baz Luhrmann, who is an Australian, was on a private visit to India. He was actually touring India on a motorcycle. And one fine day I had a call from my office saying that he wishes to meet me, and I wondered why he would want to meet me and how he would know who I was. He was Baz Luhrmann, you know, the great director, maker of Moulin Rouge, Romeo and Juliet, and such wonderful films that he's made and produced. So he came over with an artist friend of his who had some wonderful artwork which he presented to me. We talked about the country, we talked about everything under the sun except cinema. And he went away. And a year and a half after that, I had another message from him saying he wishes to speak to me. We went on Skype, we spoke, and he said, I'm making the Gatsby, the Great Gatsby, and there's a small role which he wishes that I would do. And I readily agreed, more as a gesture of friendship than anything else. But that's how Gatsby happened. My role is that of Maya Wolfsheim, who is a kind of a mentor to the Great Gatsby. Gatsby has almost looked upon him as a father figure. And there were many controversies that were surrounding Wolfsheim. The fact that he had fixed one of the ball games in 1919, and that he was very close to Gatsby. A lot of the wealth that came to Gatsby, it was alleged that came through the kind offices of Wolfsheim, but all these are, you know, more speculative. But he was there in his life as a great friend, and that's what the role portrayed. It's just one small little scene, and I am really quite amazed why
so much attention is being paid on just a small scene that lasts only for a couple of minutes in the film. But all the same, it was a great honor and a great privilege to be working in a Hollywood production for the first time, and to be alongside, some of the greatest artists of Hollywood, Leonardo DiCaprio, Tobey Maguire, Carey Mulligan, who's British, Joel Edgerton, who's also an Australian, and a fantastic crew that made this entire experience so valuable for me as an artist. Just absolutely thrilled to be there.
It's very interesting because the film almost seems so relevant to today's times. You touched upon Maya Bachchan fixing a ball game. IPL and the fixing is so current right now. The other thing that I found very interesting in the metaphor there, the film is set in the 20s, which is marking the change in America from manufacturing to services, really, a change which perhaps you're even seeing in India today, and the whole play on the stock market. But I wondered, had you read the book before you accepted the role, or was it just based on your fondness of Buzz?
The book is iconic, and I think that almost everyone that has had an access to good literature has read the book. I was aware of the story, but after Baz Luhrmann and me came to some understanding that we're doing the film, then he sent me a lot of literature and reference books and things that could inspire me to understand the role better. And that's when, we went into the more detailed work of Fitzgerald, and it's quite amazing that the book has now lasted almost 80 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, perhaps even longer.
Perhaps, yeah, 85 to 88 years, and still has a great amount of prominence amongst the literary world. It's a great story. It's very tragic, but it's also very magnanimous, and the role of Gatsby himself is so well designed in 1920s New York, an age of extravagance and just before the crash, maybe, and
The Great Crash.
the great crash, yes. So soon after the First World War, and there's a spirit of accomplishment. There's great atmosphere. People are wanting to reach great heights, accumulate a lot of wealth, and that era was so brilliantly shown in the film and captured in the book, of course.
So again, I'm reminded of 2006. I just can't. When I saw the film, read the book, the plays are so much, like I was mentioning, about the manufacturing and
Connections with Chicago and Philadelphia, which were dealing with the mafia at that time. But over and above all this story is really quite close to the stories that we make here in India. Is this very poor man
yes,
who is in love with this girl whom he loves, and they have professed love to each other. Then comes the war. He goes off to battle, and by the time he returns, she's married to somebody else, thinking that perhaps he will not return, and she marries this very, very rich billionaire, and his entire thought process, or his entire belief in life, is to create enough wealth to be able to win her back. And I think that his entire intention throughout his journey of life was how to be able to accumulate this great power that wealth brings to him, so that she can come back to him. And it's quite sympathetic to the settings as well. She lives across the bay in a huge mansion, and he builds his own mansion just across the bay, and he keeps watching that green light that flashes every now and then from the key that is outside her house. and spends a lot of time on that key himself, hoping that one day she will notice him and they will meet. And when they do, and when he professes the reasons for why he became what he became, it all ends in tragedy. But really, it's quite sad that even after his end, when he dies, there really is no one that comes to his funeral, including Wolfsheim, whom he considered to be his, almost like a father figure.
Do you feel that, well,
the girl went away with her husband and their daughter, and she left, and that was one of the tragedies. The whole story is, as you know, narrated through Nick Carraway, who's actually Daisy's cousin. Daisy is the name of the girl who he was in love with.
And his protege in some senses.
And he was instrumental in bringing them back together, because he had this little cottage just beside Gatsby's mansion, and he would see these extravagant parties, and many a times the guests were asked, why are you here? And they said, we're here for Gatsby's party, but they'd never met Gatsby. He was kind of very mysterious in his attire approach, and one wonders why he did that. But I think his main intention was how to one day be able to get the love of his life, and tell her that, and he does. When he does meet her, he does say that I've done all this for you.
But the antipathy which is shown to Maya Wolfsheim in many ways reminds me of Merchant of Venice. I wonder to what extent
Gerald wrote were, in some peculiar way, very close to his own life. It was quite ironic that when we went to Cannes for the film festival, we stayed all of us stayed at a hotel at Antibes, Cap d'Antibes, which is just a half an hour drive from Cannes. But just 20 miles further down was the cottage where Fitzgerald wrote Gatsby, knowing that his own wife was having a love affair with an airline pilot at Antibes. And perhaps everyone now conjectures, of course, whether that influenced some of the story lineup that he had in his book. It's quite intriguing. Many a times people who write books and stories like to pick up material which perhaps they themselves have been through. And it could very well have been this. These are some of the details that I picked up. The other thing that, well, a lot of the journalists who met us at the press conference in Cannes wanted to know why Baz Luhrmann had cast me in the role of Wolfsheim, because I'm an Indian and I'm not a Jew, and Wolfsheim was a Jewish character. Baz Luhrmann felt that, the description of Wolfsheim in the film was something which suited my appearance in some way, and which is why he asked me. But I just feel that in cinema we must look above all this. When we go to see a film, we never want to know whether the person sitting next to me, what caste, color, or creed, or religion he belongs to. But we see the same film, we laugh at the same jokes, we cry at the same emotion, we sing the same songs. Within this darkened hall, I doubt if there are very many institutions left that can talk about true integration. In a world that is fast disintegrating, I find this cinema hall to be a great integrator. So it really doesn't matter whether an Indian plays a Jewish character or a Jewish character plays an Indian. Perhaps for the first time, I think an Indian actor has not played an Indian role in an American film. And that was perhaps something new for them, and they couldn't understand, how an Indian could play a non-Indian character. And I met several people after the New York premiere and also the premiere at Cannes, who came up and said, "That was a fantastic accent. You got it absolutely right, just perfect Chicago accent." And I don't know what Chicago accent is all about. But I just, followed my dialogue director, who Baz put me on to, and we just went ahead with it. Wolfsheim actually, while we're talking about accents, I think had a problem pronouncing certain words, and that was there in the script. He would instead of saying Oxford, he would say Ogsford with a G. And there were a couple of other words where he would get stuck in, like say connection. He would say connection. And we played that for a couple of times during rehearsals, and then Baz said, I want to get rid of this and just be a normal American. So that's what I did.
You're so right, sir. An Indian can play a non-Indian, just like an...
Therefore, they can spend huge amounts of money in marketing and promoting their films. But I think that we are getting there. I think we learn a lot of the factor of distribution, of exploitation from Hollywood. And I think a lot of it has been incorporated now. A great amount of the younger generation, young actors, young directors and producers that you see today have all trained in America, in Columbia, in New York, in LA, and they bring back with them a lot of knowledge of how the whole management of a film needs to be incorporated, and that's wonderful. In the past couple of years, I now get a formal call sheet which tells me which time the sun is going to rise and when it's going to set, and what the weather is going to be like, and what time the car will pick me up from my hotel, and when I need to be sitting in front of the makeup room, and what time I should report on the set. I never heard of these things in 1969 when I began my career in films. But it's just wonderful, it lends a lot of professionalism to the entire job of making a film, and that's wonderful. I hope that gradually this will increase.
So the Indian film industry is celebrating its 100 years. You have been an integral part of the industry since the last 44 years. Following your recent tryst in Hollywood, what's your opinion of how the Indian film industry has evolved? Are there some parts you wish could be different?
How the Indian film industry
has evolved?
Yeah, I think technically we have made vast improvement. Our content, some may not necessarily agree with it. A lot of the old-timers would still want the written word and the writing and the poetry and the lyrics of the past to be still very strong and very potent. We don't find that today. I will remember the incidental music of a song, say of the 50s or the 60s, and most of the people here who've been through that period will remember that strain of music. But I can't remember the strain of music in today's music. Maybe this generation wants it that way, and I'm not saying this to deride what they're doing right now. The younger generation have their own beliefs and their own style, which they have evolved. When we came up with our films, I'm sure that the people in the 40s and the 30s thought that we were idiots. But I think it happens with each generation. We'll all go through this. Maybe the factor of time has also moved in a lot. We used to take a lot of time to say things earlier on. And now with communication and computers and mobile phones where you can connect with any part of the world in just a couple of seconds, has made us want to be speeding up our lives. If you talk to some of the younger generation today, they speak so fast, it's difficult to understand what they're saying. Or they're very brief. I could be wanting to express myself on a certain topic, and I would take at least 10